Welcome back to a podcast of one's own. This is episode number 8, and today we're going to talk about self-love and self-care. And I am here today with Esther.
Hello.
Esther. Hello, Victoria.
Hello.
So in the beginning we're going to briefly talk about a TED Talk that we watched in the session. It was a TED Talk by Susanna Winters, I believe her name is. And the video was titled Self-Care, What It Really Is. So to summarize it for those of you who weren't at the session, what she considers self-care, she basically made 4 points. First one being a plant-based diet, so lots of fruits and vegetables, spending time in nature, meditation and stillness, and then also movement or being physically active. And so she was talking a lot about activities that kind of restore or to counter your physical and emotional stress that obviously you are exposed to in your everyday life, and how people nowadays are so disconnected from nature, and that self-care is also a practice. So it's not something that you do from one day to another. It's about a routine that you establish for yourself. And while I do think that she has a point when she talks about how people are sort of disconnected from nature and they put a lot of stuff maybe into their bodies that are not really healthy for them, we ended up, or some of our members expressed very strong dislike towards what she was saying, because we also kind of have to acknowledge the point that she was coming from. So she's a white middle-class straight woman, which itself is not obviously not a problem.
She seemed to be doing really well. She was talking about how she came to realize that she was not doing, her lifestyle was not serving her, so she just decided to job and quit her job and
I think that's such a privileged position.
If you're in a position
not
where
everybody
you can do
has that. Yeah.
You obviously also, you're in a position where you can take time to just rest and meditate and be still. You have time to be out in nature and hike all the time if you wanted to. You have time and money to spend on super nutritious food.
It's just socio-economical privilege as well. Obviously her husband was still working, so she was in a position where she could, from one day to another. She said she had a burnout, which is terrible, and it's a serious issue. But she was able, and she was financially stable enough to quit her job, and she didn't acknowledge that most people just cannot afford quitting their job from one day to another. And also, to me, the problem was kind of she seemed to start all of these activity, and she has established a routine for herself, spends a lot of time in nature, which is great for her. But then also, the reason why she's feeling much, much better now and why she's doing so well is probably not because of the 30 minutes she spends with her feet on the ground every day, but because she quit her job that made her miserable.
Guys,
that's the reason why she's feeling better.
3 minutes into the podcast.
But I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that she is right. All of these things that she was talking about that she's found works for her. It's right. Yes, that is self-care for her if she engages in it and it makes her feel better. But also, it's because it takes stress away from her.
But it's also
and essentially, that's I think what we reached.
Yeah.
We don't want to.
Self-care is just not walking around being stressed all the time. You're doing things. There was quite a good definition, which is doing things that make you feel good, or that feels good.
I think though, I wasn't in a session, I gotta admit, because I was working myself into guilty in the library. But I think I watched the TED Talk, and she was right in what she said, and I think it is true that self-care is about not being stressed. But I mean, if not this session, when the society that we live in does not permit for that to be sustainable, in the sense that we're bound to always be stressed. We're encouraged to always be stressed, because if you don't work yourself into being stressed, then are you
actually
do you
working
deserve
at all?
do you deserve having the money? Yeah, exactly. So I think there's such a tie between being stressed out and being successful in society, where I think it's really unsustainable for a lot of people. And then in order to kind of reach that point where you're oh wait, I'm actually not that stressed because I have all these tools, you might undergo therapy. Therapy is really expensive, and not everybody has the economical and financial privilege, or even the time privilege, because I mean, once a week you take 1 hour out to talk about your issues. So not everybody has that time, not everybody has that money to go through therapy for months, years, and then come out from a place where you're like, you know what, I'm actually able to control stress now. You know, I think it's a very complicated issue in itself.
It is, and I wasn't gonna shame her for her routine or for the things that she found worked for herself. And I think it's a bit tricky when it comes to self-care, because obviously if you have been in a place where you were burned out, you were stressed, and you found a way that works for you and you have your routine, I understand that people are...
You want to share that.
You want to share that. You want other people to know. You want to help other people, and she might have actually helped some people. Like, we don't know that.
I mean, for sure.
For sure. Some women watched it and were like, "Oh, amazing! Like, I'm gonna start doing that."
I mean, honestly, myself, not from watching this TED Talk, but I know that all of these things make me feel good too.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I'm not like that's totally right. But she never once talked about the reasons she was stressed in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest take-home message, I think, from talking about self-care and in the way that we live today is just that the excessive need for it. If we were living in a type of society where we were not as stressed anymore, it wouldn't be such an immediate need for us to care. Like, self-care wouldn't be like
we weren't
so important.
If we didn't overwork ourselves every moment of our life, there wouldn't be an $11 billion worth industry based around spas and treatments and wellness, because we wouldn't be that stressed as to need a massage once a week. I mean, not that I have one because I can't afford one, but if I were be able, like, you know, just say like that wouldn't exist if we weren't expected to work as much as we work.
So in terms of, like, when we talk about self-care, we have to acknowledge that it's a very profitable industry that is
very profitable,
pretending to to fight the symptoms, but not the cause of the anxiety and the stress and the burnouts that people feel. And I just want to say one last thing to the video, because in the end, she was making the point. She was like, yeah, it's 30 minutes a day, like, you can do that. And she just said it like so confidently, and she was like, if it's important enough to you, you will do it. And I feel like, again, this is a very popular sort of strategy in capitalism, where the blame is put entirely on the individual. It's like, you are responsible for your own misery or your own luck. Like, if you want to change, you just do it. And then we talked to, like, or Kaylee said something, like, one of our members, she was like, when she was talking about being active and like jumping around and going for a run, obviously if you have a disability,
that is not possible.
It's just not possible. And she was like, well, I would love to do all that stuff, but I just physically can't. So am I now responsible for that, or
am I responsible for being miserable? I think that's like,
especially when the inability to engage in activities like that might be the reason that you need to take care of yourself, because it makes you feel bad. Because it is like, it's the reason for your like poor mental health or whatever it might be. And I think it's really difficult, because a lot of the things, this is mainly for, I think, no, actually it goes for everyone. Scratch that. The way that self-care is sold and marketed by corporations is a very, like we said, a very shallow type of self-care. And I'm not saying it can't help in the moment to put on a face mask and pamper yourself a little bit. There's a lot of, like, the ritual of it, I think, can be very, like, it can be really healing to be like, you know what, I actually do deserve the time to do this. Like, I think it can reach deeper than that. It can be like, I deserve the time that I'm giving myself right now. In that sense, you prove it to yourself. But also, it keeps you in the loop of being dependent on these things to assert your value to yourself.
I also think intrinsically there's something that is wrong in selling self-care through things that distort your image.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Like, sorry, I thought you were...
No.
The idea that in order to take care of yourself, you need to do a face mask, which you might think, Victoria, that is not that bad. But it means that you're constantly worried about, is my face hydrated enough? Do my pimples show? Do I need to take a face mask to make my pimples show less? To make this and this and that? Those are aesthetical things that actually don't mean anything in a greater scheme of things. You're just bound to make them. But I think they also feed into each other so much. Because you start with a face mask. I mean, I'm so guilty of this. This morning I put on makeup and lipstick because I want to look good. Because I want to take care of myself. What does that even mean, my dudes?
Mm.
But, you know, when you start with a with a face mask, you then go into makeup. And I mean, it's a wicked industry. Because you start with makeup and you start altering your facial features through makeup, which is all that self-care, and you think, actually, you know what? I do feel better when my nose looks smaller. I do feel better when my eyebrows are more like up. I don't even know.
Then goes into like plastic surgery.
Then you go, but you're like
highly profitable industry.
Highly profitable, super dangerous because a lot of people use illegal surgery or just it's just dangerous from us, in my opinion. I'm not shaming anybody who has it, because that's your freedom, but also in my opinion it can be really dangerous to want to alter
But is
yourself
it actually your
permanently.
freedom if you feel
Well,
like
exactly.
you have to do it?
But that's the thing,
what
like I
society
think
tells
you start with a way, and then when people ask you, I think this is a very big trend at the moment, you say, well, that's self-care. Because I wasn't happy with myself, and now I'm super happy with myself.
It's easy, like you easily condition yourself, like from personal experience as well. Like if people say no, but it's a way that I ground myself to like sit down and do my makeup and like really like just take a moment, like some creative expression, whatever. If that makes you feel good, then you're like, this is quite simple biology. Like it's you immediately condition yourself to feel better when you see a face with makeup after that, and you will start associating that with it, and it just makes it into a downward spiral where you're more likely to feel worse when you're not wearing makeup.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
of
and
course.
It's very much like, and this is obviously taken advantage of by businesses.
Yes,
naturally.
I think,
but it's I think a very big part of the way that self-care is talked about and advertised. It's just really,
But yeah, let's talk a bit about the sort of how self-care, like who's the target audience of this, because I feel like a lot of girls or women in our society, like during the session, everyone could sort of relate, everyone had like their own stories, and we all know that when it comes to social media, like on Instagram or Facebook, you get targeted apps that are tailored to what you previously Googled or what you're interested in or whatever. And I know that I get a lot of self-care, self-help targeted books.
Same.
Or it's crazy. And I mean, I brought one thing up which I thought was just so ridiculous I had to screenshot it. I got an ad on Facebook that said, this is the anxiety fighting bracelet or something. Like, it actually claimed, it was like, are you depressed, are you anxious, buy this bracelet, you immediately feel better. And I was like, it's ridiculous. It's getting out of hand. Really. Some people will go and buy that.
I'm gonna get a bit more like therapist-y too. Shout out to my lovely chunky therapist, chunky jewelry therapist. She's not chunky herself. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is the way that we view consumption and self-care consumption is very similar to an anxiety-induced brain. For example, you get the trigger, you're sad, you're feeling horrible, you don't know what to do, you want to fix that. What's the compulsion? The easiest compulsion is to go online and see, how can I make myself feel better? And they tell you, buy this product, and you're like, oh Jesus, I need to feed into this compulsion right now because I'm feeling so bad. And this is telling me that I will feel so much better if I just do this one thing. So you do it, you buy it. And the compulsion gives you relief for like 10 minutes, an hour. You do it, and then you're back at feeling hard when you're like, but what? I did that thing. It's not fair. I did that thing and I'm still feeling like this. Clearly, I've not done it enough. I've not used the best product out there.
Mm-hmm.
I need to fit into this compulsion again and buy the most expensive cream that is out there. And it's just like a cycle, an ever-ending cycle that just like...
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just gonna bounce off what you were
yeah,
saying about
yeah.
personalized
Go
ads.
ahead.
I think one of the biggest problems, you were saying a bracelet. I am guilty of having worn and wearing Spanx. Like, you know, those tummy holding underwear.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like a corset thing. Or...
Yeah, but it's not it's just like the underwear that
Okay.
is just like sucks everything up. And I know that's not the best
Hate
thing.
them.
Hate them, rightfully so. I've spent useless money on them. However,
Are they
whatever.
expensive?
Not super, but like also like I could have spent those money on other
Yeah.
things. Because also I don't like wearing them because I don't like the way that it makes me think of myself. So I just have them for when I need them, quote unquote. But I get now ads that are supposedly empowering of women saying you're supposed to feel good with yourself. You're supposed to feel free, and if you feel free by wearing these Spanx, that what's stopping you? You know, I now
That's twisted.
I now have
It's
the
so
freedom
weird.
of going around and feeling good about myself. And that's part of self-care too. Like, and that kind of is like the fitness industry, the nutrition industry.
So, like,
yeah.
this is like
Also massive industry.
this is like the Kardashians promoting body positivity.
Yeah.
Like, it's like they're saying like, oh, everyone should be proud of like the way they look or whatever, and then they
Great when you have like the most
only
perfect
benefit, like
body.
their brands are basically just like, I don't know, they're selling shapewear or whatever, and they're like, yeah, you should feel good about yourself, and you will only feel good about yourself if you
have
wear these
shapewear.
because you need to look skinny. And like,
Yeah.
it's just like, it's just, I don't understand how people. No,
It's
I'm
I
stopping
think-
myself there.
I think if we talk about actual self-care, like what can
Yeah.
we do in terms of,
Good
because
idea.
I think in the session we kind of agreed on that there's no, self-care and capitalism just don't work together.
No.
It doesn't, there's nothing that could
they
be
depend
sold
on
to
you needing it.
Yeah,
They're not actually wanting to solve it.
exactly. So I think, so for me, part of like, let's call it like long-term self-care, like maybe genuine or like actual self-care, is just acknowledging that the idea of you having to be happy all the time is just, it's
Unrealistic.
ridiculous.
Yes.
Everything comes and goes in waves, like whether you're sleepy or whether you're hungry. Of course, one day you're gonna feel better than others. It has to do with hormones, with what's going on in your life. There are so many factors. And just the idea that you have to be 100% happy all of the time is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I don't know, for me, I just kind of feel like just sometimes taking a moment and being like, okay, right now I'm not feeling very good.
Yeah.
That's just how it is, and it's okay. And just sort of being patient with yourself. And I know it's very hard. We all compare ourselves to other people all the time. But I think sometimes just having the idea like someone else's strength or smartness or beauty doesn't mean that it doesn't neglect your own,
No.
right? So
I think an important part of self-care, long-term self-care, kind of what you were saying, is about changing mindsets. And whether it is with a therapist or whether it is not, if you have the ability to go with a therapist, chef's kids, that's amazing. But I think it's a lot about mindsets and do a lot of introspection, I don't know how to say that. Self-reflection work within yourself and kind of assess which mindsets you hold, which false beliefs you hold are harmful to you. So for example, a big step for me was Lin-Manuel Miranda once said, I'm also a recovering Catholic. And I am a recovering Catholic. Which made me laugh a lot. But Catholicism, I guess part of it feeds you this idea that in order to achieve happiness, you have to suffer. It is through suffering that you achieve good things. And for me, that always fed into my uni work and my overworking myself. I thought, if I'm not in the library every day from 9 till 2 o'clock in the morning, crying, and I know this is twisted. Now that I recognize it, I'm like, LOL, that's why I had a mental breakdown a day. But for me, that was like, I don't even care if I'm studying or not. And I just need to be there. Because if I'm not there, it means that I'm not suffering enough. And it means that if I don't do well, it is my own fault for not putting myself through that pain. And then through my therapist, through myself, I kind of did that introspection and that mindset shift where I was like, wait a second, where does this come from? Does this make me happy? Like, not even happy. Does this make me content? Is this something that is sustainable? Is this doing anything for myself, actually? And then after that, I was like, okay, let's try to switch things up. And I started taking more nights off, if I could. Of course, I can't all the time, but when it's a bit quieter, I take some nights off or some mornings off, some hours off. I don't care, even 10 minutes off from my studying break. And I think, and my results have gotten better. Like, my marks have been better. My ability to relate to the work is better now.
And it didn't cost you anything.
Cost me nothing. It was just about, hey, what are the things that I'm doing?
You didn't need a face mask.
I did not need a face mask for
needed
that.
a moment to myself.
Exactly.
And take a breath. Like, that's what I
But
needed.
you can apply that to a lot of things, like the shift in mindset. For the longest time, I had a gym membership because I thought, I feel happy when I go to the gym. And then I was like, do you actually? Because you spend the entire hour at the gym looking at the clock thinking, what the fuck am I, what the fuck am I doing here? And then, Esther said she canceled her gym membership. I was like, wait, that is possible? You can do that? You're allowed to cancel your gym membership? So I was like, fine, I just cancel my gym membership. And I found something else that makes me feel, and you can tell that it makes me feel actually different. This costs money because it's a dance class. But, I can do dance in my frame sometimes. And I do a lot of the time, very cringy. But, it's that, I think a lot of self-care is actually about to talk to yourself.
I think self-care is really about giving yourself the attention
we give others, but not ourselves. No?
Yeah, just listen, I'm feeling this right now, and just be present and listen to what you actually want to do. Maybe.
And it's crazy how patient and compassionate and empathetic we are with other people and with friends, but we are so hard on ourselves. Because we are fed this idea that we need to be the best version of ourselves, and if we're not, it's our own fault. And
it's so draining, and it definitely keeps you needing more self-care than you would otherwise. That we're fed that we need to see ourselves as projects or works in progress, that we need to always improve, which I think is really, really harmful. Because it's simply not true. If you,
it's in some ways, I feel like obviously we are works in progress, and I feel like, for example, over the past couple of years, I feel like I've come a long way in terms of educating myself and just getting involved in activism and feminism and that kind of stuff. So I do feel like I'm still a work in progress, and I still have a lot to learn. But also that's not something, I don't feel like I'm a work in progress in, I have to constantly be in shape, I have to constantly be...
We're not a commodified work in progress.
If it's driven by curiosity or by,
your genuine
if you're drawn to something that will sort of make you grow, that's great. But if you're driven towards quote-unquote improvement from not accepting yourself as you are, then it's harmful, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know how much time we have left, but I also wanted to just touch on a little bit what we were talking about, how the gendering of self-care, because we're obviously talking about it from a very from our perspective, from
we were both
women in our 20s. And we were talking about in the session how it's a lot different for the guys that we know, and it obviously ties into the sort of macho culture and not necessarily being able to talk about or acknowledge that you need to be taken care of as well. You're not just the provider that's taking care of other people, which the patriarchy is selling the idea of a man to be. I think it's a very difficult one because women are marketed to take care of themselves, we're marketing to for profit, but still, self-care is catered to women in a lot of ways. It is also catered to men, but in other ways.
Okay, so I'm gonna go into my marketing and society mode. Shout out to my professor Elaine Thompson. You're the love of my life. I hope you don't listen to this. Also my dissertation supervisor. I'm a business with marketing student, so we talk a lot about this stuff in my class, marketing and society. Very good class. And what is being recognized by critical marketing, which is a branch of marketing that looks at at advertising critically, basically, is that the speed in which self-care to men is developing and spreading is alarming, in the sense that she always says 5 years ago in her lectures she wouldn't have an example of self-care for men.
No.
And now the amount of men in the class who are interested in telling their own opinion, their own experience with self-care and how it's catered to men, it's incredible. She's always said, it surprises me how it increases every year, basically. Self-care to men is catered in a very different way, I agree. Because it's catered again with fitness. We said protein shakes. She said that she mentioned bulking season, and we laughed a lot. But
cheat days.
But something, one thing that has been attested by scholars and academics is that the same impact that it has had on women, it's happening to men, but very quickly. It's 1 year to the other. Men are told that they need to be afraid and ashamed of their bodies, and this is creating a lot of mental health issues for that too, because if you don't want to go to the gym, then what does it say about you? So I think it's fair to say that marketing and advertisements caters to women more, because historically women are the ones who are taught to hate themselves more with makeup, surgery, masks, shapewears, clothes, whatever it is. But I think in self-care to men is it's present, and it's harmful, and it's taking on a trend that can be really dangerous,
and also because of social stigma won't be talked about as dangerous.
Exactly.
I feel like obviously for women, like you said, and there's this quote by Laurie Penny where she said that if all women woke up tomorrow morning and felt comfortable in their skin, capitalism would not exist.
Of course.
Which is it's such a classic that I always bring it up because I love it. And it's true, but obviously we see that feminism has done, in terms of the body positivity movement, a lot has changed, and we now see a diversification of body types in society where just people, and Instagram obviously played a big role in that, because people who were not given a voice before, they now created their own platforms, and they share their stories, and they show that a lot of body types are acceptable. It's not just being tall and skinny, it's also being curvy, being how you were born, which is amazing. It's a great movement, but obviously that's also mainly for women, that's targeted at women, because we were the ones who were body shamed over decades. And now what you were saying about men, there's not really an equivalent for the body positivity movement for men. So right now we're at the stage, and it's quite interesting to observe that from the outside. Right now we're at the stage where there's this one body type, which is lean and fit and strong, that is presented as the goal for every single one, and despite what your physical preconditions are or aren't, and I'm honestly I'm quite curious to see whether there will be an equivalent to the body positivity, or whether men are going to be included in the body positivity movement.
I think so. I have come across some body positivity activists that are men.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
On Instagram. We can share them on our social media later. That are actually really good, and they've acknowledged the fact that there is not really a body positivity movement for men as it is for women, and also these guys, at least the ones that I've been following, they're very aware of the space that they are in, and that they are not wanting to necessarily interfere in the women's body positivity movement, because that could also be a dangerous type of like taking up space that is really needed.
It's not for you.
But I do think that it has to be a different type of movement as well, because there are other, even though capitalism is selling one part, one ideal, there's a totally different acceptance of I might get so like, I know that this does not sit well with everyone, but there is the big difference. Like, there is an honoring of the dad bod.
No, I think that's fair to say.
There's a difference between men and women in that,
like,
in the sense that
right.
like it's marketed in a different way, but
like being overweight as a man, it's not gonna prevent you from getting a certain job or getting into politics, whatever. While women are like, obviously it's a whole other level. Like, I wasn't,
But through the lens of self-care, I definitely think that this again is a really, really big issue for men, because it does put the responsibility on the individual, and it's saying you are not worthy because you're not giving yourself the time and energy to like go and take care of yourself. And then you're like, but
so
maybe this would have.
when I see these sort of posts on Instagram. Like, I'm just like, wow.
Oh my god, all those like
So
really like people who are like self-defined entrepreneurs and like no pain, no gain, the grind never stop. You need to work for what you want. If you don't,
obviously that's like, very much internalized, like just the like macho culture, or even just like provider culture.
It's a macho culture. It's just like, it's so terrible. My first boyfriend, he was a really nice guy when we started dating, and then he got into bodybuilding. And now I haven't spoken to him in like 3 years, but I recently checked out his Instagram, and he's now like a proper like bodybuilding influencer. And I talked to this with my friend yesterday, because he literally uses like the hashtags, like be the best version of yourself, like these like pseudo like inspirational quotes, and I was like, that is so terrible.
This is why I hate the fitness industry, because it's got nothing to do with self-care. It really doesn't. Movement, that was a part of the TED Talk to start with, absolutely. The fitness industry, it's got nothing to do with self-care. It's got nothing to do with health at all.
That was like one of the points that I wanted to make. Going to the gym and lifting 20 kilos, 30 kilos, how much you want, that is not controversial, but that is not gonna improve your mental health. That might me feel you better. Like, if you're into that, that's absolutely fine, and you're allowed to do that, because I have friends who really enjoy going to the
tell
gym.
Other people they're not worthy because they cannot do that.
Movement can mean anything. Movement can mean even not like we were saying about, it needs to be more accessible. Movement does not necessarily mean jumping around and doing anything. It might just mean like walking outside, like, or going outside of your house for like a minute and just breathing, and then go back in. It doesn't need to be movement in the sense of overworking your body. It can be movement of whatever kind. The problem is you can't, like, I think health wise, and correct me if I'm wrong, Esther, maybe you shouldn't live an extremely sedimentary life. But I don't even know if that is correct or not.
We're not meant to sit still all day, but no one, like, very few people do that. We move it, like, not even just like not active movement in the sense, like you like walk or move or whatever you do, like to get to
shake your hands, shake your like. I don't care. It's like it's just really, about like being with your body.
What really upsets me as well is that a lot of the it's not just the way that it's advertised, it's the way that it works internally as well. Because if you're told that go to the gym, it will make you feel better, that's founded on the idea that you're not good enough as you are, first of all. But there's this terrible like marriage of toxic body ideals, regardless if it's for men or women, and of shaming people for not taking care of their health.
Yeah, it's created this weird cult. Like
it really is, and
scary.
Then obviously going to, this is again from personal experience, going to, also one of the reasons why I canceled my gym membership, because for the longest time I went and I was like, I went all the time, and I was like, this is great. It actually makes me feel better. But it, like, the reason it did make me feel better was because it quieted the anxiety that I wasn't doing
anything
exactly
to take care of myself.
Yeah.
And if I'm doing other things to take care of myself, then I noticed that this is actually not what was making me feel good. I was just dampening the anxiety, and that made me feel better, which is true. And I think that's a big part of, obviously, people are going to go into, like, men are going to be catered to, like, they're like, oh, finally people are talking about what self-care is for men. I'm now going to take care of myself. And then they start doing that, and then they start feeling there's an instant self-gratification that they don't no longer have to feel guilty about not taking care of themselves, quote unquote, and that will make them feel like they're in control and they've found the key to take care of themselves. And then of course they are going to try to spread that to other people, and that's why it spreads like wildfire so quickly. Because it's finally someone is talking about it, and finally they've found some gratification in it, but it's not really gone deep.
So I think definitely two sides of the coin, like social media.
One last thing that I'm going to talk about. We talked about how it's gendered. I think even the fitness industry for self-care is gendered in the sense that men are told to bulk up and be muscly, and women are told to be like thin. And it's always this thing where if you start taking care of yourself, then you're gonna automatically lose weight. And then you do that, you know what I mean? Because you're gonna start going to the gym, and you're gonna start eating a salad instead of like a burger, and you're automatically gonna thin. Which means that when that doesn't happen, because it doesn't happen, you're gonna feel...
Because believe me, I tried.
Because believe me, I've been trying for about 15 years of my life. It doesn't happen if you're not actually if your only motive and your only goal is to be thin. Nothing is gonna improve in your life. Trust me on that. And when that doesn't happen, you're just gonna feel shitty with yourself. You're like, but that's not fair. Why am I not thin in 2 weeks? This person lost 10 kilos in a week. How is that? Because that's not real and that's not fair. And also, like, it just does not happen. But then it's so, like, the idea of being thin is so tied to self-care, even in healthy
I feel
way.
Like it's so dangerous. I could do an entire
talk about this. We should do that.
How being skinny is tied to being healthy,
and it's just not even true.
I was listening to a podcast about this, and they were like starting out talking about it in a really like clever way. They were like, oh, people have definitely skewed the nutrition industry, and like dietitians and nutritionists, they have a very weird way of talking about, like, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I know it might be triggering, but like it's a very like particular way of talking about food and nutrition, but it's totally like not based on science. But then they still, and I was like, oh, this is great. Oh, I like hearing about this. This is great. Like, actually people talking about it from like a sensible point of view. But then at the end of it, they still landed on the whole, and then if you start adopting this approach, blah blah blah, then you will probably
lose weight.
And then they like try to disclaim it by saying, and that doesn't mean that it's better. That doesn't mean that you're necessarily like that it's better to be thin or blah blah. They were like disclaiming that to like not upset anyone, but then still said, but it tends to be that leaner people are healthier. And I'm like, that's just a gross lie.
That is not true.
That's just not true.
Absolutely not true.
And it's just so like public opinion and what's taken as truth is so narrow for both men and women that it's really, really easy to just sell as self-care.
Yeah, we've been talking for a while, so to just to sum it up, if you've made it to the end with us, if you're still with us, so I think some of the ideas about how you can maybe get into self-care that doesn't cost you anything, it might sound a bit like spiritual, but just take time, be patient with yourself. Grant yourself the same attention and empathy that you have towards others and towards your friends. Ask for help. If you're not feeling well, try to talk to someone. Try to build a community that's understanding and safe space for you. And yeah, just try. I mean, it's obviously hard. We're all bombarded with these ads, but just try to, before you purchase something, think about how long that's actually going to make you feel better, or whether that's just substituting something or fighting an anxiety that you have, and try to get to the root of the problem, instead of just buying lots of stuff to defeat the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
Great.
thank you so much for
Amazing.
listening.
I thought it was going to be a short episode. It was not.
But there's just too much to talk about.
Okay.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.